You can't go out playing golf having fun.
Fun. Senor, you've obviously never played Wingfoot.
It don't matter if you win by an inch or a mile. Winning's winning.
You've got to be kidding me, Vegas. Monday night. There's my picks for this week. Now, if you want next week's picks, I can give you those by Friday.
Good evening, sports fans, and welcome to Week 17 of the Wingfoot Locks, brought to you by Wingfoot Sports. It is the final week of the NFL season. It's kind of a little sad in a way, Greg, don't you think?
Sad like the 1 o'clock slate of games, right?
It is definitely a slim pickings, not to be confused with Carl Pickens, the former Bengals wide receiver here. I think I used that one earlier in the season. Listen, Week 17, the week when everything goes out the window. We no longer care about what happened previously. It's all about looking ahead to the motivation that these teams have to play the final game of the season. And, you know, that can go a lot of ways. We've seen teams that need to win the game be very disappointed and get sent home. It happened a couple years ago. I think the Ravens, to those aforementioned Cincinnati Bengals, who they are playing again this week. Ravens need to win, and they're in. The Bengals, well, they need to draft an offensive lineman to protect Joe Burrow once he returns from that ACL injury. That's their biggest priority at this point. So, Greg, I know we both are on this game. Tell me what you think about this matchup. Right now, the number fluctuating somewhere between 11.5 and 13.
Yeah, you're definitely getting better numbers. Mine's been chilling at 13, minus 105. So I've been waiting for it to scoot right on down to 12.5 so I could toss it into a couple of 10-pointers. But Ravens have looked good for what? Probably a good 4 or 5 weeks at this point. And the Bengals are definitely playing better football here. So, you know, this could be one of those situations where you have a little bit of a tight match in the first half, and then they kind of pull away and get some distance there. But again, it's just motivation now. It's not the situation because Indy threw away their position last week by letting up that lead. So now the Ravens control their own situation. So it's not one of those things where they're going to be watching the scoreboard or anything like that. They're going to be highly motivated, win and we're in type of situation. So it's going to be, 100 miles an hour from start until the game's pretty much so locked away. I think, I don't want to speak on your behalf, I'm putting it in with some teases, right? So like I'm not going to go all the way up to the 13. Just I don't like laying that many points, so it's going to be linked up with some other things. But the 13 points certainly better than 14, right? So if you want to lay that big number and not attach it to anything, but certainly if you're getting that and you can kind of chop that down south of 7 there on a 6.5 pointer or anything like that, that's going to be the way that I'm looking at it. I'll probably stay away from the full 13, but I like the Ravens or stay away. I certainly wouldn't be grabbing 13 points with the Bengals, even though they have looked better. They haven't looked great.
They haven't. We look at the level of competition that they've been playing as well. I mean, look, you say that this time of year or about all these teams. Let's not forget the Ravens had that tight game against the Browns, and both of those teams right now need a win to make the playoffs here. So that could be the defining game of their season, and that was key for me. I think that moment that Lamar Jackson came out of the locker room and played Superman, this team has kind of turned their season around since then. And I guess that was the moment when they did. I look at Harbaugh and I look at the situation that they went through in the middle of the year, losing their starting left tackle after signing him to a monster deal. They were able to overcome that. They also had to deal with all of the COVID cases. They were able to overcome that and get some key wins there. I think that the same thing is going to happen here, that they're going to ride that momentum into the playoffs. They've gotten back to doing what they are best at, and that is running the football, right? Running and play action off of that run. I don't know what happened in the middle of the season. They maybe were trying to prove that Lamar Jackson, can take the team on his shoulders by throwing the ball a little bit more. But I think that hurt them, and I think that was the reason that they got a little bit away from that creative playbook. I know they were without Mark Ingram. He is clearly a difference maker on that team, even if he's not getting all the carries that he used to, that three-headed monster that they have there. And you throw in the fact that it is just motivation at this point. I like the fact that they are playing a team in Cincinnati that kept them out of the playoffs just a couple years ago. A lot of the players were there that are still there now that were on that team, and they remember what it feels like to miss the playoffs against the team that you're supposed to beat. I also like the fact that Cincinnati has won their last 2 games, so that it's not like, hey, we need to prove something this last game of the season. I actually think that bodes well for Baltimore in this one. And throw in the fact that when these two teams played earlier with Joe Burrow, Cincinnati just couldn't score on them. We've seen Cincinnati disappear in a couple games this season when that offense gets overmatched against the defense that it's playing, and I could see that happening again this week. And once they do, I think with the Ravens running attack, they salt it away. So I'm going to take this both ways. I am going to take them at the number. Right now I got 12.5, so I'll take that. I'm also going to take, 11.5 is my best number, so I'm going to take the 11.5 there. And I am also going to sprinkle them in a couple teases this week because, as you said, win and they're in, and that is the key for them. If it comes down late, they're not going to be trying to run up the score or anything. It's all about just securing that win and getting into the playoffs here. So I think we're both on the Ravens this week for obvious reasons. It is a big number, but I say lay it. Speaking of big numbers, the biggest line on the board this week right now, the Indianapolis Colts laying 14 points against the Jacksonville Jaguars here. Colts, as you mentioned, Greg, squandered that opportunity against Pittsburgh. This week, they are facing the hapless Jags, right, who didn't come out in the second half against the Chicago Bears. Give credit to the Bears for running away with that game there. But this is a division game, right? The only win for the Jaguars on the season came in week 1 against the Indianapolis Colts. So the Colts, I would say revenge was a factor for them, but it doesn't matter. They need to win, and they need help to get into the playoffs here. Frank Reich says he's not going to have the scoreboard on inside the stadium so that they can't go scoreboard watching. I'm sure at halftime they'll be checking that out, though. So you think 14's a little much to lay for the game, but you like a play on the Colts in this one.
Yeah, first half, 7.5. I think I was texting you last week. Watching their games is like the same damn game every single week. They get out in front, and then they try and squander the late lead, right? So it's Houston twice. They just did it to Pittsburgh, right? So they're pretty good at establishing a lead, but just not keeping it. So that defense, and understandably so, right? When you're up by 2 or 3 scores, you start to loosen up a little bit. The defense gets into a little bit of a shell coverage. So despite not having the scores on in the stadium, they're going to know what's going on. I don't think there's any way you can take the full game there. So I would say the first half, I think we're seeing it at 7.5. So right. I'm good with laying 7.5 for the Colts because they do play better in the first half. Number one, they're going to be fully motivated in the first half. The Jags can't lose. I think they're locked in, right? So they can't lose that spot. Pick. Yeah, they probably don't want to have that massive streak going into the last game of the year. But at the same point, I don't think Robinson's going to play. It didn't look like Shark had practiced. So, who are they really going to be trotting out there and really, how many cares are they going to give?
Your description of the Indianapolis Colts reminds me of an old Jerry Seinfeld skit when he goes to rent a car. And he tries to make a reservation. They know how to get the lead, but they don't know how to keep the lead. And that is really the key part of the reservation. You know how to take the reservation.
Anyone can just take reservations, Joe.
Anyone can just get the lead. Well, maybe not.
I will say, I don't know that anyone can just get the lead. But, I think that's where we go off course. But, yeah, they certainly don't know how to keep the lead.
And that is the key part of getting the lead, is keeping the lead. All right, so the Colts. Now, ultimately, I'm going to put this one on here. We didn't talk about this beforehand. There's 5 teams for 4 spots. You got the Titans, the Colts, the Ravens, and the Browns. Wait, I'm missing one. Oh, and the Dolphins. Sorry. Who's not getting in? Who's the odd team looking out?
Or you're gonna ask me who's not gonna make it?
I'm putting you on the spot. Who's not getting in the playoffs? Because the Colts are on the outside looking in right now. Even if they win, they're not guaranteed a spot right now if those 4 teams in front of them win.
This is gonna be wishful thinking.
Okay.
No, but that would be stupid handicapping. I'll say Miami.
You say Miami is the team that's on the outside looking in when it's all said.
Yeah, I wanted to say Cleveland because I can't stand Baker Mayfield. Great commercials. Sorry about that on the audio. Great commercials.
They are fantastic.
Yeah, terrible quarterback.
Well, listen, I will say that, just like Peyton Manning, right? Better actor than quarterback.
Oh.
Well, that's how highly I think of Peyton Manning as an actor is really what it is.
There we go.
No diminishing him as a quarterback. He's like Tom Hanks out there. Guy gets me in tears, has me chuckling on the floor.
I think I've had my my proxy Twitter account attack Rodgers before on the discount double check, and I think we've sent some shade about him being better at commercials than he is at quarterbacking a team. But we can't say that so much this year.
Yeah, no, definitely not. The guy's looking at an MVP this season right now. So I'm going to actually pick up on that because I won't make you answer it without giving my opinion. I think you said it. I think the Browns are the team that are on the outside looking in when this is all said and done. And the reason is right now, their team is in turmoil, right? We saw them lose to the Jets, and how'd that work out for the Rams after they lost to the Jets? I know that Ben Roethlisberger is not going to play this week for the Pittsburgh Steelers, who really haven't had a bye week this entire season with all of the COVID rescheduling that they've had all season. However, I don't know who's going to play. And also, Cleveland had to shut down their facility again with three other players testing positive for COVID-19. I know that people want to say that the Jets are playing inspired football. They're playing all right, and I put it just as much on the teams that they're playing as them right now. And I think that Cleveland is not in a good spot going into that game against the Steelers. You're chomping at the bit there, Greg. Go ahead.
I just realized that it's going to be Mason Rudolph against Myles Garrett.
Yes, it is the rematch.
Are people chirping about that?
It was a mention. I've heard it around a little bit, some talk.
Because just when I had a little whoop light bulb going on over here, like I just got a huge smile on my face. Can I actually make a comment about that? How are they going to go ahead? Like I know Myles Garrett does some really decent stuff in the community, but how are they going to make him the nominee for the Walter Payton Man of the Year award?
I thought the same
One
thing.
year after that,
Yep.
like. Come on, just wait a year. A year. Just do it next year. Like, come on.
I agree.
It's absurd.
Listen, I think everybody deserves a second chance. I think that one moment should not define any individual, although it's very hard, but because it can. I truly believe that it can, and that's what we really need to be understanding of, is that despite all the good things you do, it can be wiped away in a moment, and you can be remembered for something terrible. But yes, I agree with you. Like if you go to jail, you come out, you make over your life. That's fantastic, and I respect that. And he is doing a lot of good things. But yeah, you can't do it that quickly, man. I completely agree with you on that front. Listen, don't you think that's
just don't have?
Go ahead.
Oh yeah, I was gonna say you don't have any other dudes on the team doing some community service. You can be like, hey, Miles, keep it up. We're gonna get you this in 2021 here. Yeah, it's not a great look.
Well, that's what I was going to say next, is who else is on the team? Like, there's got to be somebody else on the team that's doing some stuff in the community that's like, hey, what the heck? What about me over here?
I didn't use my helmet as a Mason chain.
In the words of Juice Landry there, bless him, as they say. Just bless him. The other thing is, too, with the Steelers on that one, I mean, don't you think that defense is going to want to show up a little bit for Rudolph? I think it's kind of a ballsy move by Tomlin putting him in there. I think it's going to be very interesting, this game. I don't know. 10 points is just, it seems like a lot to me. I said they're going to be out, and I didn't even have Pittsburgh as a pick coming into this, but I got to take Pittsburgh plus the points. That's just an impromptu as I'm talking this out here. I don't know how I didn't have them as one of my choices. It's the Steeler way. Pittsburgh plus the points.
Now, as I'm unraveling this and peeling back the onion, they named Miles Garrett a captain before Mason Rudolph was announced as a starter for this game. This is great. I take it all back. Is this a 1:00 game? Because I'm going to be peeled to my TV screen watching this. I can't wait.
Yeah, it is a 1:00 game over there in Cleveland. And also, isn't it so Cleveland Browns to not make the playoffs? Right? It's just like this would be a perfect spot for Cleveland to let it slip through their fingers. So,
yeah.
Pittsburgh.
Moving on
to do it to them. All right, we will move on to the next game. Last week we told you the Bucs were in a great spot to clinch a playoff berth there against the Detroit Lions. Boy, that was I think the most one-sided game of the week. And now this week they need to win again to wrap up that 5th spot. They are 7-point favorites. As why don't I have it in front of me here, Greg? They are 7-point favorites at home against Atlanta.
Falcons?
Yes, thank you.
Yep.
The Atlanta Falcons. How you can do one of these? You say it from The Simpsons.
Against the Denver Broncos.
Without Julio Jones, who a lot of rumors that he could be traded in the offseason here. I think that this is another route for the Bucs, and they go in playing their best football of the season. One of the big reasons for this is if they win, they get to play the winner of the NFC East. And that is such a huge position. I think that becomes the de facto matchup that you want in the NFC right now is whoever comes out of the NFC East, which is crazy to think that you want to go on the road and play a division winner. But that is the scenario that we're looking at. And it's either going to be the Cowboys, the Redskins, Cowboys, Washington, or the Giants. Cowboys and Giants playing each other. So they're already these teams are already in playoff mode, number one. Number two, the quarterback situation in Washington is extremely spotty. Alex Smith not taking the starting reps in practice this week, splitting it with Taylor Heineke. I don't think Smith is coming out against the Eagles. And good luck trying to win with Taylor Heineke as your quarterback. I don't care who you're playing. And then the last thing about this is the fact that they already went to the Meadowlands and they won against the Giants there, even though it was a good game on Monday night for the Giants. And the Cowboys just have no defense. So when you put all that together, I think Tampa Bay really wants to win this game. On the other side, Raheem Morris is auditioning for the job as head coach, right? He's going to interview down there. So I think there's a little bit of motivation on Atlanta's side. I just don't think they have the horses in this one. Without having Julio Jones going up against that Tampa Bay defense is just going to be too much for them, in my opinion. And I also think that they played their game of the week last week, game of the year, I should say, against those Kansas City Chiefs, keeping it really close, and they couldn't come out with the win there. It's a deflating loss. I think that was the one that they needed to get. Of course, it's a division game here. I think that the Bucs are just hitting their stride. I say lay the points. This is the second half. When I talked about having the Ravens in that tease, I like throwing Tampa in the tease with them there. What are your thoughts, Greg?
This will be my first half of this is going to be a 7-pointer. But yeah, same side. I think that's the big thing, right? Is scoop up this win and you get to play the worst team in the playoffs. Granted, it'll be a road game, but they're playing a road game anyway, right? So from that side of things, I think there's plus motivation there. So definitely want to just take Tampa to just win on the field.
All right. We turn now to the hottest team in the NFL. I'm not talking about the Green Bay Packers. I'm talking about the Chicago Bears, led by Mitch Trubisky here. Their offense has been tearing it up. This week, Chicago needs to win to make the playoffs. If they win, they're in. They can get in with some help if Arizona loses. Right now, the Bears are 4.5-point underdogs. It seems to be the consensus across the board, somewhere between 4 and 5. But you're not buying into the hype. You're not buying into the monsters of the Midway, Greg, are you?
No, I'm liking. I really enjoy the pressers that Rodgers does about hey, I'm hoping it's going to get cold and everything. They're real into the home field advantage, and they smoked the Titans last week at home in that snow game. That was fun to watch. But from that side of things, I think they got a lot of motivation here. I don't think they want to leave it to chance. I think they want to wrap things up, and I don't believe that just because you need the game to get in, that's any sort of competitive edge here. It's a division rivalry game. They could basically knock them out of the playoffs. Green Bay could, while securing themselves the bye and home field throughout. And quite frankly, you can't I don't like what the Chiefs are going to be. The situation they're going to be in. They're not going to play starters, right, this week. They're going to have the bye.
Chiefs, you said?
Yeah, I'm pivoting here because I like the idea of playing this game through to get the bye. Okay. I don't like the idea of bye week, then you got to get the offense back and ready for playoffs here. I like trotting the team out there and playing a real game for Green Bay. So, who knows? They could totally, fool me and trot out backups in the second half, right? But I don't have any sort of inside info. So essentially, if starters, I think there's too much movement here. If the starters are playing the whole game, you have to lay 4 now with the Packers. I'll take that because I'm not buying in. I think they've taken advantage of some really subpar teams the Bears have.
I agree with that. The one thing I will say is something that I've harped on for a little while now with Chicago, and that's that defense. That defense with Khalil Mack and Akeem Hicks and Fuller on the outside, it's a for-real defense. And we said, yes, we saw them gash Tennessee last week, but we've said all season Tennessee doesn't have a defense, right? So I'm not surprised offensively what they did there. The biggest surprise for me was what they did defensively, I guess, to Tennessee in holding them there. So if that's going to happen, I think that the defense of Green Bay is what's going to have to stand out in this game. I will say I think this is my favorite game to watch on the board this weekend. And there is a chance that Chicago still makes the playoffs if Arizona loses, which is probably going to be unlikely considering that they're playing a quarterback who doesn't have a snap in the NFL this year. So,
what's dude's name
Wofford,
for the Rams?
I think it's Wofford, but don't hold me to that. There, I know his last game of football was in the AAF.
Nice. So you and I were talking offline here about the playoffs and how I said I don't like the new format here. We could have the backup Rams quarterback. We could have Mitchell Trubisky, and then I don't even know what we consider Heineke. Is he a backup? Is he a third string? We could have 3 just not
He's
good
a fourth
quarterbacks.
String. I think Heineke's a 4th-string quarterback because we
have
Alex Smith
and the fact that
Dwayne Haskins, Kyle Allen.
Yeah, and he wasn't even starting over Dwayne Haskins, who is just the worst.
But let's be honest here, right? Alex Smith was their 3rd-string quarterback coming into the season, so we want to see the 3rd-string quarterback.
Yeah, no, and from that side of things, I just, I think usually there's one bad team that kind of limps in here, and I'm putting Mitchell Trubisky in with these other crap quarterbacks here because I just don't have any faith. Yeah. So we'll see if he can bite me in the butt this week. We'll see.
Listen, I have said this
for it, Mitchell.
I have said this before. I do not want to face the Chicago Bears in the playoffs if I'm any other team in the NFC East. Whether they win this game to get in or lose this game and somehow that defense stands up tall for the Rams and Arizona loses, if the Bears get into the playoffs, watch out. I am telling you, defense wins in the playoffs, and I would be scared of Mitchell Trubisky and that offense that they're putting together right now. Matt Nagy seems to have revamped the offense, and it looks like that team from a couple of years ago that won the division over there. I think that was the double doink. Was that the double doink year?
It was the double doink year.
You'd remember that.
That dude just keeps pelting the uprights. You see, I feel like every week or like every other week he's smacking an upright. Oh man, dude! Like, what are you doing?
It's like one of those things though. When you do it, like you just stare at it and you can't not do it. It's like if I'm on a golf course and I see a tree on the left and nothing but open fairway to the right. I'm gonna say, you see that tree? It's going right for that tree. I'm not going to try. I'll turn my body the whole other way. But it somehow is going to hook, and that ball finds that tree. Like there's a magnet in there. One more game on the board that I like this week. It's the other NFC West matchup with Seattle taking on San Francisco. Right now, the Seahawks minus 6.5. So Seattle, you might say, doesn't have a lot to play for, but there is a scenario here where Seattle can actually get the number 1 overall seed. If this is a 3-way tie for first, so that would mean that Seattle wins, New Orleans wins, and Green Bay loses. If that happens, then Seattle holds the tiebreaker in that scenario, and they get the number 1 overall seed. Is that right, Greg? Or do the Saints get it in that scenario? Because I keep mixing them up. It's either or they need the Saints to lose. Go ahead.
The Saints would have to lose because right now they're ahead of the Saints.
So they need the Saints to lose. If it ends in a 3-way tie, the Saints get the number 1 overall seed.
Correct.
If it ends with if Green Bay loses and the Saints lose, then Seattle gets the number 1 overall seed.
I don't know what happens if Green Bay loses, the Saints lose. I don't know if the Saints jump Green Bay.
They don't, because Green Bay holds the tiebreaker because they beat them head to head.
Oh, okay, got it.
So the only way that the Saints get the number 1 overall seed is if there's a 3-way tie. That's the only way that would work. So if Seattle wins this one, and Green Bay loses, and the Saints lose. Now the Saints, I think, have a tough matchup, and just about a couple hours ago, it came down that Alvin Kamara is dealing with COVID-19. He won't play, and he could miss. This is crazy to me, Greg. He could miss their playoff game because he's not eligible to return until January 10th, which is Sunday. Let's not forget, some of these games are played on Saturday. How much you want to bet that regardless of who the Saints play, they put that game on Sunday? I think
is it already determined?
It
Do they? Okay.
Yeah, it is not already determined on which teams are playing which days. So I'm just gonna throw it out there and gonna go out on a limb and say the Saints are not playing until Sunday. Hey, how about this? A Saints-Bears matchup on Saturday without Alvin Kamara. I'll take the Bears in that matchup. Thank you very much. Anyway, so getting back to the game at hand that we actually are talking about, Seattle is
the Seattle game.
Yes, the Seattle Seahawks. San Francisco right now, I think they've packed it in, right? They had their win last week. C.J. Beathard came out. Even so, the defense is what kind of stood on its head here against Arizona. I think that this week Seattle is just too much for them, and that they are going to Seattle's defense has quietly been playing a lot better. I think they caused some turnovers here for Beathard. That ends up being the difference in this game, and I think they want to put this one to bed early, right? I think that Pete Carroll isn't going to coast in, and there is still enough at stake for them that they are going to give it their all, because I think that number 1 seed, freakier things have happened. I've seen freakier things happen.
Oh, yeah.
With these teams.
Oh, it's not a massive stretch to believe that Green Bay could lose, right? So, that line's moving the other. I don't see it, right? But, there's a lot of juice coming in on Chicago. So, from that side of things, you got to be Seattle's got to be going out there and winning all the field. You can't take C.J. Beathard lightly after last week, right?
Right. And I think that was the best thing that happened to him for this game. And I just think that defense right now is playing some of their best football of the season. And they've been a different team, Seattle has, since they got Carson back at running back. That play action has definitely changed everything, and it opens things up so much more for Russell Wilson, and he's able to hit some of those big plays down the field. I think they end up rounding into form as they head into the playoffs here. Now, the other game that we mentioned, New Orleans visiting Carolina, this game is going to be key. You like Carolina in this one as the second half of the tease.
Yeah, one final comment on Seattle there.
Go ahead.
No surprise Jamal Adams comes from the Jets, right? When he's prematurely celebrating with a cigar celebration, which, by the way, as I was looking into it, it looks like he lit it backwards, apparently, which, by the way, if you cut the end of a cigar, is there really a front and a back?
Fair.
Like,
Wow. That
like,
you just
seriously,
blew my
like,
mind on that one.
I feel like that is not the critique. The critique is, bro, you're in the playoffs, right? Like your job is to win the Super Bowl, right? Nobody smokes a cigar. We don't smoke a cigar at halftime when we're halfway to the over, We don't do that.
Yeah.
You might wanna, but we just don't.
Now, if the
But yeah,
over is already hit, that's a whole nother story.
I made Krista. This is, I'm sure she loves me telling this story. I made her give me a high five with 7.5 minutes left in a game the other day, and I said, "See, that's why you bet overs, because you could celebrate early."
Yeah.
Yeah, so getting back to it, Carolina plus 13.5. They've been playing a lot of decent games, close games when they don't win. You were mentioning, didn't they get blowed out? Yeah, it was the Green Bay game where Green Bay got up big, the defense stiffened up, and then they came back with a couple of garbage time touchdowns. So I think they've been in a lot of games, and when indeed they fall behind, they tend to, have a little bit of self-respect. I think they're a well-coached team and try and, fight and scratch and claw to get back into the game. So I liked that before you told me about Kamara. That was news to me. So now I like it even better because what was it, Christmas? You're getting the Saints off of extra rest. But what was it, the 6 touchdowns? He was 42 of the 52 points for the Saints, right? That's a big old chunk of the offense right there. So I'll take my 13.5 points and couple it with Tampa Bay or couple it with Baltimore. Kind of dealer's choice situation there. I think for the sake of what we were saying, for the official tease, it'll be Tampa and then Carolina plus 13.5.
All right there. The NFL playing the role of Grinch here even long after the holidays. They issued Kamara a $5,000 fine for wearing those holiday shoes. If I were him, I would wear them regardless if I'm going to be scoring 6 touchdowns like that.
Right? Somebody asked me if he got fined for that. I was like, nah, I'm sure it was approved.
Yep, $5,000.
That'd be fine. 5 G's.
It's not a good start to the year for him though. 2021 has been off to a rough start. You get a $5,000 fine for wearing shoes back on Christmas, and then you get the Rona. That's a rough combination for you.
Yeah, that is a tough year.
The other thing is too that we always talk about, right? Like, I just did it. We said, okay, he won't be eligible to play until January 10th. That's assuming the guy's, good and healthy and doesn't have any of these setbacks. I forget who it was, but there was one of the players that was talking about how it kind of put him on their butt for a while. So, just because they are athletes does not mean they are superhuman.
Might have been Walter Payton Man of the Year nominee Myles Garrett.
I think it was. You're right. It absolutely was. So if it can get to Myles Garrett, it can get to any of us. By the way, watch Death to 2020 on Netflix. Very funny. Another Tom Hanks reference in there. It was Tom Hanks got the coronavirus so that we humans knew that it could even infiltrate celebrities and famous people. That's how we had to take this seriously.
Well, listen, we're not obviously acknowledging the severity of the pandemic, but no negative mindsets here. 2020, we trekked through, right? We got through it, and now 2021 is going to be a good year. We're not going to speak ill will of any years. It's a big chunk of your life right there, so don't be cursing previous years.
2020, like the NCAA tournament, survive and advance. We have done that. That. So now it's time to play the role of Cinderella.
I like it. That's going to be the theme for Week 17. Survive the bankroll and advance to the playoffs. We'll be hot in the playoffs.
All right, so let me try and run this down here because we did a lot of talk in this podcast. This week, take the Colts first half minus 7.5. In the Green Bay-Chicago matchup, Greg likes the Packers laying 4. Next one in Pittsburgh-Cleveland, I'm going to take the Steelers without Big Ben. Even though Cleveland has to win, I say give me all those points. Take them plus 10. Although I see mostly at 9s and 9.5s out there. So if you can find a 10, get it. I still like it at 9.5. In the matchup between New Orleans and Carolina, first half of the tease is Carolina plus 13.5. The second half of the tease is Tampa Bay to win outright over the Atlanta Falcons. I like Tampa Bay at the number. 6.5s are out there. Some 7s at even money. Find the 6.5 if you can. If not, pay for it. The other thing we like is the Baltimore Ravens. I like this in a tease. I like this plus the number. 13's getting a little steep. If you have it under that, obviously, that's the way you want to go. They're taking on Cincinnati. I'll lay the points with Seattle, 6.5 against San Francisco. And I think that wraps it up. Did I miss anything, Greg?
No, sir.
All right, Week 17, pay attention to those last-minute sits and starts because those are key and sometimes determining this. Keeping my eye on you, Josh Allen. And enjoy the final week of the 2020 regular season. I can't believe they made it through the way they did. Hats off to the NFL and the players for making it happen because, boy, we needed football season.
Survive in advance, right?
That's it. All right, 14 teams will be going to the playoffs. No. Yeah, I did that. Right? 14? 15?
Yep. It's still not even 12 good ones.
It's crazy to me. 14 teams in the NFL playoffs this year. Enjoy the games, everybody. Remember, until next week, it's not whether you win or lose, it's whether or not you cover the spread. Have a great week. Enjoy the games.